Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're unpacking the career of a man who has become a sort of ubiquitous cultural furniture.
It's a great way to put it. Cultural furniture.
You know, you turn on the radio, he's there. You watch a documentary about the history of a recording studio, and he's directing it. You check the credits of a Muppets movie, and somehow he's the guy playing drums on a track.
He's everywhere.
We are talking, of course, about Dave Grohl.
It is genuinely, it's almost impossible to navigate the landscape of the last 30, maybe even 40 years of rock music without tripping over Dave Grohl. He's like the connective tissue for an entire era.
But that's the thing. He's so present that I think we almost take him for granted. You know, we see the nice guy smile, the coffee commercials, the viral moments, and we forget just how improbable his actual career path is.
Absolutely.
Because usually when we do these deep dives, we are looking at a specific event or a breakthrough. Today, the mission is to look at a statistical anomaly.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Statistically, Dave Grohl's career should not exist.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. He was the drummer for Nirvana,
Right.
Arguably the defining band of the 1990s. Full stop.
No argument there.
When that ended in the most horrific way possible, the standard script for a drummer in that position is to fade away. Maybe you join another band as a drummer. Maybe you do the convention circuit.
You become a session guy, a footnote.
Exactly. You certainly don't step out from behind the kit, pick up a guitar, which, by the way, nobody really knew you could play, and then front a band that becomes an arena-filling monster for the next 3 decades.
It's the drummer curse. It really is. In the history of rock, the list of drummers who successfully transitioned to being the primary songwriter and frontman of the globally massive act it's incredibly short.
Who's on it?
You've got Phil Collins, obviously.
Right.
Maybe Don Henley from the Eagles.
Okay.
And you have Dave Grohl. That's pretty much the list.
And that second act is what we really want to dissect today. Because there is this public narrative of Grohl as the nicest guy in rock. And it's a great brand, don't get me wrong.
It's a fantastic brand.
But when I was reading through the source material for this, the biographies, the studio logs, the timelines, I started to get a different vibe, a very different vibe. I saw a guy who is incredibly calculated, relentlessly driven, and frankly, a bit ruthless when it comes to his vision.
You don't get to headline Wembley Stadium twice with 2 completely different bands just by being a nice guy who tips well.
Right.
You get there by being an absolute perfectionist. So our goal today is to sort of peel back that cool dad persona and look at the engine underneath. We need to reconcile the guy who cooks barbecue for 500 homeless people with the guy who will, without telling him, erase his own bandmates' tracks if they aren't perfect.
That's the core of it. So let's rewind the tape. We need to go back to the beginning to understand where this drive, this ambition comes from. He's synonymous with Seattle now and maybe D.C., but he actually started in the Midwest, right?
Yeah, born in Warren, Ohio, 1969. But the setting for the story, it really shifts to Springfield, Virginia, pretty early on in his life. His parents divorced when he was 7, and he was raised primarily by his mother, Virginia Grohl.
And that divorce detail, it seems really important. In the reading, it felt like it created this very tight, almost us against the world dynamic between him and his mom.
It absolutely did. His mother was a public school teacher, very open-minded, and she really became the bedrock of his confidence. But if we are looking for the musical patient zero moment, the spark, it didn't happen in Virginia. It happened in Evanston, Illinois.
The cousin story.
Cousin Tracy. This is 1982. Dave is 13 years old. He goes to visit his cousin Tracy for the summer. Now, you have to picture this. Up until this point, Dave is a classic rock kid. He likes, whatever's on the radio. But Tracy's different. She's punk.
And she takes him to a show, a real show.
She takes him to a club called the Cubby Bear in Chicago, right across from Wrigley Field, to see a band called Naked Ray Gun.
Naked Ray Gun. That is a name that just sounds like it belongs on a dive bar bathroom wall.
Which is exactly the vibe.
Yeah.
You have to imagine this from his perspective. He's 13. He walks into this club. It's dark. It smells like stale beer and sweat. People are slamming into each other in a mosh pit. It is visceral.
Yeah.
And the band on stage, they aren't playing perfect scales. They aren't prog rock heroes. They are just loud and fast and aggressive.
And for a lot of kids, that would be terrifying. But for Grohl, it was...
What, an invitation?
It was the aha moment, the light bulb. He realized that the barrier to entry he always imagined was gone. He looked at them and thought, I don't need to be a virtuoso. I don't need to study music theory for 10 years. I just need to mean it. It made music feel accessible.
So he goes home to Virginia. He's got the punk bug. He wants to play drums. But there's a logistical problem, a big one. He doesn't have any drums. 0 drums, not even a snare. They lived in a small house. They didn't have the money or, frankly, the space for a full kit.
So explain this to me, because this is the part I find fascinating. He becomes one of the hardest-hitting, most powerful drummers in rock history. How do you develop that skill without the actual instrument?
He improvised. He built a kit in his bedroom using his furniture. He set up a designated pillow for a snare drum, a bedpost for a ride cymbal, a chair for a tom-tom. And he sat there with these thick, heavy marching band sticks.
Wait, marching band sticks?
Yeah, much heavier and thicker than what you'd use for a standard rock kit. And he just played along to records for hours and hours.
Okay, that's a fun image, the kid beating up his pillows. But from a technical standpoint, does that actually translate? Does hitting a pillow really teach you how to hit a drum?
It teaches you something very specific, and this is absolutely crucial to what we now call the Dave Grohl sound. Think about the physics of it. When you hit a real drum skin with a stick, what happens?
It bounces back, you get rebound.
Exactly. The drum does half the work for you. It pushes the stick back up, which allows you to play fast, to do rolls with less physical effort. Now, hit a pillar. What happens?
Nothing. It just thuds. It absorbs all the energy.
There's 0 rebound. 0. So to get the stick back up for the very next hit, you have to physically pull it up with your own muscle. You are doing all the work every single time.
So it's basically resistance training for drumming?
It is intense resistance training for his wrists and forearms. He did this for hours a day for years. He was building these fast-twitch muscle fibers that were designed to fight a dead surface.
So when he finally sits down at a real drum kit...
He nearly puts the stick through the drum head. He is so used to fighting the pillow that when he hits a surface that actually gives energy back to him, the power is just, it's explosive. That cannon fire snare sound you hear on Nevermind, that isn't just studio magic or a producer's trick. That is the sound of a guy who learned to play by beating a mattress into submission.
That makes so much sense. It explains why he looks like he's trying to murder the kit every time he plays.
He's an incredibly physical player.
Right.
But we have to layer something else on top of that.
Yeah.
It wasn't just brute force he was developing. He was listening to very specific records while he did this.
Right, because he wasn't just listening to punk. He was a massive Rush fan.
2112 by Rush.
Which is pretty much the musical opposite of punk rock. It's mathematical, it's complex, high-concept progressive rock.
It is. But he discovered 2112 when he was about 8 years old, and he said it just rewired his brain. He idolized Neil Peart, the drummer for Rush, who is famously known as the Professor.
So you have this fascinating duality developing in his teenage brain.
You do. On one side, he wants the raw, dirty, emotional energy of Bad Brains and the DC punk scene. On the other side, he wants the technical precision of Neil Peart and the heavy, deep groove of John Bonham from Led Zeppelin.
He's got a Bonham tattoo, right?
He did. The 3-ring symbol on his wrist. So he's sitting in his bedroom trying to execute Rush-level complexity with punk rock ferocity.
While hitting pillows.
While hitting pillows. That is the recipe for Dave Grohl.
So let's talk about the hustle part of this origin story. Because he's not just sitting in his room dreaming. He's actively trying to get out there. And let's just say he's creative with the truth sometimes.
He was a total hustler. In high school at Thomas Jefferson High, he was actually voted class vice president.
Oh, way.
Yes. And he used that role to play snippets of the Circle Jerks and Bad Brains over the school's PA system during morning announcements.
Just force-feeding hardcore punk to the entire suburban student body at 8 a.m.
He couldn't help himself. He just needed to share the noise. But his academics were, they were tanking. Too much cannabis, too much drumming. He bounced around a couple of different schools, and eventually he sees an ad for a band called Scream.
Now, Scream wasn't a high school band. They were a legitimate DC hardcore act. They toured, they had albums out.
They were the real deal in the DC scene, a very respected band, and they needed a drummer. Grohl is 17 years old. He calls them up to set up an audition.
But he doesn't tell them he's 17.
Of course not. He lies and says he's 20. He knew that if he said he was a junior in high school, they wouldn't even let him in the room. So he walks in, destroys the audition with that pillow power drumming, and gets the gig.
And this leads to the first major fork-in-the-road moment of his life. He gets the job, but the job means touring Europe. He can't do that and finish high school.
He has to drop out. And this is where we really see that risk tolerance, that all-or-nothing drive. Most kids, or at least their parents, would say, look, finish your diploma, then go play music. Grohl's quote on this is perfect. He said, I was 17 and extremely anxious to see the world, so I did it. He dropped out in his junior year.
And his mom let him.
Virginia Grohl is the unsung hero of this entire story. I really believe that. She saw that this wasn't just a phase for him. She saw he had vocation. So she let him go. He got in a van with a bunch of older guys and spent the next 4 years basically starving.
We should clarify what starving means in this context. This was not the glamorous tour bus life.
Oh, God, no. This was sleeping on floors in squats in Italy life. This was eating corn dogs from gas stations for every meal life. But this was his conservatory. This is where he learned how to manage a crowd, how to play through sheer exhaustion, how to keep a band together when everyone smells terrible and is hungry and broke.
But all good things, even starving in a van, come to an end. Scream implodes in 1990, the bassist quits mid-tour, and Grohl is stranded in Los Angeles. He's 21, he's broke, and he's stuck.
And this is where the network kicks in. It's all about who you know. Buzz Osborne, the singer for the Melvins, a hugely influential sludge metal band, he knows Dave. And he also knows a couple of guys up in Seattle who are, coincidentally, looking for a drummer.
Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic.
Nirvana. At this point, Nirvana had released their first album, Bleach. It was cool, it was underground, but they were burning through drummers. They wanted someone who hit harder. Buzz connects the dots. He gives Chris Dave's phone number.
Now, Dave had seen Nirvana before this, hadn't he?
He had seen them on a record cover first. And his description of them is just perfect. He said they look like psycho lumberjacks.
Which, if you look at the photos from 1989 and 1990, is 100% accurate. Flannel shirts, unwashed hair, just staring blankly at the camera.
And then he saw them live.
Mm.
And he was really confused by the visual. He said, "What, that little dude and that big motherfucker? You're kidding me?" He's talking about Kurt, who was slight and small, and Christ, who was this towering 6'7" giant. It looked like a total mismatch.
But he gets the invitation to audition. He flies up to Seattle. And again, we see the reality of the situation, the poverty.
He moves into Kurt Cobain's apartment in Olympia, Washington. And apartment is a very generous word. It was a tiny, squalid space. Grohl talks about living on corn dogs and dealing with these turtle tanks that Kurt had everywhere. It was grim. These were not guys living like rock stars.
But they go into a room to play, and this is the moment. This is where everything changes.
It was instant combustion. Grohl said they played, and within 30 seconds, they just knew. Kurt and Christ had a very unique rhythm. It was kind of sludgy, kind of behind the beat. Grohl came in with that pillow-training power and that punk precision, and he tightened the whole thing up. He was the engine that the car had been missing.
He joins in September of 1990. They go into the studio to record Nevermind in May of 1991.
I mean, talk about timing. He jumps on the train right before it goes supersonic.
We don't need to relitigate the success of Nevermind. It changed the world. But I want to focus on Dave's role inside the band. Because obviously he's the drummer, Kurt is the visionary, the songwriter. But Dave was writing, wasn't he?
He was, but he was doing it in the shadows. He was very, very aware of the dynamic. Nirvana was Kurt's vision. You don't walk into a room with a generational songwriting genius and say, "Hey guys, check out my little pop song." So Dave kept his head down.
But he recorded a cassette tape.
The Pocket Watch cassette. He released it in 1992 under the pseudonym Late, with an exclamation point at the end. And if you go back and listen to that tape today, it is shocking. You can hear the blueprint for the first Foo Fighters album. It wasn't like he suddenly learned to write these melodic rock songs in 1995. He was writing them in 1990 and 1991.
Did Kurt know about this? Did he know Dave was writing these songs?
He did, and this is a really touching and kind of tragic detail. Kurt heard a demo of a song Grohl wrote called Alone Plus Easy Target. Kurt listened to it in the bathtub, apparently. He loved it so much that he kissed Dave on the face.
Wow. A literal kiss of approval.
A literal kiss. Kurt told him, "I'm so excited that you and Chris are going to contribute more songwriting in the future." He didn't see it as a threat. He saw it as a relief. He wanted to share the creative burden.
They even officially recorded a Grohl song, right? Marigold.
Yes. Marigold was recorded during the In Utero sessions and ended up as a B-side on the Heart-Shaped Box single. It's the only Nirvana song where Dave Grohl sings lead vocals. So the door was cracking open for him to be more than just the drummer.
And then, April 1994.
The wall comes down. The world stops.
Kurt Cobain takes his own life.
We have to sit with this for a moment. This isn't just the band broke up. This is a profound trauma event. Grohl is 25 years old. His friend, his roommate, his musical partner is dead. And the media storm that follows is just insane.
Grohl has said in interviews that he didn't just quit music, he couldn't even listen to the radio.
He said music equaled death. Every single time he heard a song, it just reminded him of what he had lost. So he did what a lot of people do when they're confronted with immense grief. He ran
He went to Ireland.
the Ring of Kerry, one of the most remote, beautiful, and desolate places on Earth. He just wanted to disappear. He was driving a rental car around these tiny country roads thinking, maybe I'm done. Maybe I'll just be a regular guy.
And this is where the story gets almost cinematic. I mean, if you wrote this in a screenplay, a producer would tell you it's too on the nose.
It really is. He's driving down a back road in rural Ireland, not another car in sight.
Yeah.
He sees a hitchhiker up ahead. He slows down, thinking he'll give the guy a lift. As he gets closer, he looks at the hitchhiker's T-shirt. It's a Kurt Cobain T-shirt. Kurt's face just staring right back at him on a lonely road in the middle of nowhere.
Like, it's just chilling.
It completely freaked him out. But it also clarified everything in that one instant. He realized, I can fly to the ends of the earth, and I cannot outrun this. The shadow of Nirvana is going to follow him forever. So he had a choice. Let it haunt him and define him as a tragic figure, or turn around and face it.
So he didn't pick up the hitchhiker?
No, he stepped on the gas and drove off. But he flew home to Seattle immediately. He realized the only way through the grief was to push through it. He had to exorcise the demon by making music again.
He books time at Robert Lang Studios in Seattle. This is October 1994, so only about 6 months after Kurt died. And he has a very specific mission. He's going to record the songs he's been hoarding for years.
But he doesn't want to form a band. He doesn't want the pressure of the drummer from Nirvana's new band. He wants to do it alone, anonymously.
So when we say alone, let's be really specific about what that means. How does one guy record a full rock album in a week?
It's a feat of endurance and meticulous planning. He booked the studio for 5 or 6 days. He would come in, visualize the song in his head, and play the drum track from start to finish with no other music to guide him.
Just to a click track.
Not even always a click track, just a song in his head. Then he'd run into the control room, listen back to it, make sure it was good. Then he'd run back out, pick up a bass guitar, and record the bass part over the drums he just played. Then the rhythm guitar. Then the lead guitar. And finally, he'd do the vocals.
He's like painting a picture one color at a time.
Exactly. And you have to remember, this is on analog tape. This isn't digital Pro Tools where you can just copy-paste a good chorus or fix a mistake. He had to play it right, all the way through. He recorded 15 songs in 1 week.
And the result of that 1 week was the debut album, Foo Fighters.
And let's talk about the name Foo Fighters. Why did he choose that name?
It's a UFO term from World War II, right?
Right.
For unidentified flying objects.
It is. But he chose it because it sounded like a group. It sounded plural. He wanted people to pick up the cassette and think, oh, who are the Foo Fighters? Is it a gang? He was hiding in plain sight. He was terrified of being a solo artist, of having his name on the cover.
But the tape gets out. Eddie Vedder plays it on his radio show. Record labels go absolutely crazy for it. It's a hit. And suddenly, Dave has a good problem. He has a hit record, but he has no band to play it live.
He needs bodies. He needs a lineup. And interestingly, one of the first people he talked to was Chris Novoselic.
They almost reunited.
They discussed it. Chris apparently asked to join. But they both had this moment of clarity. They realized that if Chris joined, everyone would just see it as Nirvana 2.0 without Kurt. The ghost would be too big. The pressure on Dave to fill Kurt's shoes would be crushing.
That feels like a very mature and self-aware decision for two young guys to make in that situation.
They'd probably save their friendship, to be honest. So instead, Grohl recruits Pat Smear, who had been the touring guitarist for Nirvana, so there was a comfortable link there. And then he raids a band called Sunny Day Real Estate.
He poaches their entire rhythm section, Nate Mendel on bass and William Goldsmith on drums.
And this brings us to the next critical chapter, the transition from Dave the drummer to Dave the frontman. And maybe more importantly, Dave the boss.
Because that nicest guy in rock persona, it starts to get a little complicated here.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the recording of The Color and the Shape. This is the second album.
This is 1996, going into 1997. The band is toured. They're a real unit. They go into the studio to record the official follow-up, and the pressure is on. The first album was basically a demo he made by himself. This is the real test of Foo Fighters as a band.
And Dave isn't happy with how it's going.
He's not. He's listening back to the recordings, and he's deeply frustrated, specifically with the drum tracks.
Which has to be an incredibly awkward position. You have arguably the world's most famous rock drummer standing at the microphone, judging the guy who is currently sitting at the drums.
It's a nightmare scenario for William Goldsmith. He's a great drummer. Sunny Day Real Estate is a legendary emo band for a reason, but he's not Dave Grohl. Dave was hearing a specific cadence, a specific power, a specific snap in his head. He felt Goldsmith wasn't hitting hard enough, that the takes weren't locking in with the grid he imagined.
So does he mentor him? Does he sit down and say, hey, Will, let's try it like this?
He tries a bit, but he's not a great communicator in that way. He's conflict averse. So eventually he chooses the nuclear option. He tells the band, hey, we're going to take a little break. Then, without telling Goldsmith, he flies to Los Angeles, goes into a different studio, and secretly re-records all the drum parts himself.
He wiped the track.
He erased Goldsmith's work. He planed the drums on Everlong, Monkey Wrench, My Hero, pretty much the entire album except for maybe 1 or 2 tracks.
How does Goldsmith find out?
He basically hears the final mixes and realizes it's not him playing, and he feels rightfully so completely betrayed. He quit the band immediately. He was devastated.
I mean, that is cold. That is corporate-level ruthlessness.
It is. It's conflict avoidance turned into a weapon.
Yeah.
He couldn't handle the direct confrontation of firing him or endlessly correcting him, so he just did the work himself behind his back. Grohl later expressed regret, but also admitted, I don't know if I'm finished playing the drums yet.
But here is the uncomfortable question we have to ask. Was he wrong to do it?
This is the central tension of Dave Grohl. Ethically, it was a mess. It was a terrible way to treat a bandmate. Artistically, he was 100% right.
Because the color and the shape is a masterpiece. It's a modern rock classic.
It is the Foo Fighters album, and the drumming on a song like Everlong is iconic. It is frantic and precise and powerful, and it drives the entire song. If Goldsmith had played it, would it be that good? I think we know the answer is probably not. Grohl sacrificed the relationship to save the song, and by extension, the album.
It establishes right then and there that the Foo Fighters is not a democracy. It is a benevolent dictatorship with Dave at the top.
Precisely. And Grohl realized that if he was going to be the frontman, he needed a drummer who could match his intensity. He needed a twin. He needed an equal.
Enter Taylor Hawkins.
Taylor was the drummer for Alanis Morissette at the time. You have to remember, this is the mid-90s Jagged Little Pill era. Alanis was the biggest star on the planet. She was playing stadiums. Taylor had the cushiest, best-paying gig in the world for a drummer.
So why would he leave that to join a band that just had a very messy, very public drummer firing?
Because Taylor Hawkins wanted to be in a rock and roll band.
Yeah.
He didn't want to just be a sideman for a pop star. And when he met Dave, it was instant chemistry. They were like long-lost brothers. Same energy, same sense of humor, same love for Queen and the Police.
They finished each other's sentences.
They did. And Taylor was an absolute monster behind the kit. He was the only guy who could hit as hard as Dave, who had that same explosive energy. With Taylor in the band, Dave finally felt comfortable stepping away from the drums for good because he knew the engine room was secure.
So the classic lineup of the band stabilizes. They release hit after hit. There is nothing left to lose, one by one, in your honor. They graduate from playing theaters to arenas to stadiums all over the world.
And Grohl's reputation as this unstoppable, almost superhuman force of nature really cements itself.
Yeah.
And nothing, absolutely nothing illustrates that better than the Broken Leg Tour.
Gothenburg, Sweden, 2015.
He's running around the stage, hyping the crowd up during the second song.
Yeah.
He miscalculates a jump and falls 12 feet into the security pit. Snap! His fibula is completely broken.
Now, 99.9% of performers would be in an ambulance within 2 minutes. The show is over, refunds are issued, tour is canceled.
Dave Grohl grabs a microphone while he's lying on a stretcher in the dirt. He tells the crowd, I think I just broke my leg. Then he looks at them and promises, I will be back.
And he does it.
The medics drag him backstage, they set the bone, put a temporary cast on him, and 20 minutes later, he's carried back onto the stage. He finishes the entire 2.5-hour concert sitting in a chair with his leg propped up while a medic holds it in place.
That is pure adrenaline and just stubbornness.
It is the show must go on ethos taken to its absolute extreme. But the tour was just starting. They had a massive North American stadium run booked. Canceling it would cost millions in insurance claims and crew salaries and promoter fees.
So he designs the throne.
He's high on painkillers in the hospital after surgery, and he draws a sketch on a napkin. A giant Game of Thrones-style chair made of guitar necks, with lights and a motor and a seatbelt. He got his crew to build it, and he toured the entire summer, sitting in that ridiculous, amazing throne.
It became this symbol of rock and roll resilience. Axl Rose even borrowed it later when he broke his foot.
It just proves that the machine does not stop for anything.
But speaking of machines not stopping, we have to talk about his musical ADHD, because being the front man of one of the biggest bands on earth apparently isn't enough work for him. He is constantly moonlighting.
He seems to have a compulsive need to collaborate, and I think it comes from a deep-seated fear of stagnation. If he sits still for too long, he gets bored. The machine has to keep moving.
So let's look at Queens of the Stone Age. This is 2002. The Foo Fighters are having a rough patch internally. They're not getting along. Grohl takes a break to go play drums on their album Songs for the Deaf.
And this is a really critical moment for music nerds. Because the drumming on Songs for the Deaf is totally different from his drumming in Nirvana or even early Foo Fighters.
How so? What's the difference?
Josh Homme, the leader of Queens of the Stone Age, loves a very specific style called motoric. It's a German concept. Think of bands like Kraftwerk or New. It's robotic, it's repetitive, it's incredibly driving. Homme famously hates splashy cymbals washing over everything. He wants the drums to sound dead and dry and tight.
So Grohl had to completely change his style to fit that mold.
He had to strip away all the flashy fills, all the Bonham-esque cymbal crashes. He had to be a machine. If you listen to a song like No One Knows, the drums are so tight and dry they sound like they were recorded in a vacuum. But Grohl said it was the most fun he'd had in years because he didn't have to be the face or the leader. He just had to shut up and drive.
And then he swings to the complete other end of the spectrum with the project, Them Crooked Vultures.
The supergroup to end all supergroups. You have Dave Grohl on drums, you have Josh Homme on guitar, and on bass guitar, you have John Paul Jones.
From Led Zeppelin.
I mean, can you even imagine? You're Dave Grohl. You have a John Bonham 3 Rings tattoo on your arm. You learn to play drums by listening to Zeppelin records over and over. And now you are looking across the stage, and the guy who wrote the bass line for Black Dog and the Lemon song is waiting for you to start the song.
The pressure must have been absolutely suffocating.
But he stepped up to it. And musically, this is so interesting because Zeppelin has a swing. John Bonham famously played slightly behind the beat. It's loose, it grooves, it breathes. Grohl had to learn that feel. He couldn't just hammer it like a punk rocker. He had to learn to dance with it, to play with that legendary feel.
It really seems like these side projects are his form of continuing education. He goes away, he learns a new musical language, and then he brings that knowledge back to the Foo Fighters.
Absolutely. He's a musical sponge. Probot, his middle project where he wrote all the music and got his 80s metal heroes like Lemmy to sing on it. Playing with Paul McCartney. Tenacious D, he just never stops learning.
He's also a historian in a way. We have to mention Sound City. He didn't just participate in a documentary about a recording studio, he directed it.
But it wasn't just about the building itself. It was about a very specific piece of equipment inside that building. The Neve 8028 mixing console.
Okay, ELI 5 time. Explain it like I'm 5. Why does a mixing console matter so much? Isn't it just a bunch of knobs and faders?
In the digital age, maybe? But in the analog age, the console was an instrument in itself. The Neve 8028 is famous because of its internal wiring and transformers. It adds a specific harmonic distortion to the sound. It makes things sound warm and thick and punchy.
So when you plug a guitar or a microphone into it, it just sounds better than plugging it directly into a computer.
Much better. It sounds human. It has character. And that is Grohl's personal crusade. He hates the cold perfection of digital recording. He hates auto-tune. He hates when producers use computers to snap drums to a perfect robotic grid. He wants to hear the mistakes. He wants to hear the tempo speed up and slow down naturally.
Which is pretty ironic, considering he erased William Goldsmith's drums for not being perfect enough for his vision.
It is deeply ironic. But Grohl would argue, I think, that he wants human perfection, not computer perfection. He wants the perfect feel, not the perfect grid.
So let's give it to the man himself. We've talked about the musician, but who is Dave Grohl when the amps are turned off? We have the nice guy narrative, but there are some real complexities there.
Well, first of all, there is a very real physical cost to everything we've been talking about. Dave Grohl is significantly hearing impaired.
He's going deaf.
He has terrible tinnitus, a constant ringing, especially in his left ear, which is the ear that's closest to the snare drum and the onstage monitor wedge. He has admitted in interviews that he has been reading lips for 20 years. If he's in a crowded restaurant, he says he can't hear a word you're saying.
And yet he refuses to wear the in-ear monitors on stage that all the other musicians use.
Right. Most pros wear in-ears now. They're like custom-molded earbuds. They block out the dangerous stage volume and let you hear a perfect mix at a safe volume. Grohl refuses to use them. He still uses old-school floor wedges that just blast sound at his face all night.
But why? That seems completely self-destructive.
He says in-ears remove him from the natural atmosphere. He wants to hear the crowd screaming. He wants to feel the air moving from the amplifiers. He prioritizes that raw connection with the audience over his own physical health. It's incredibly stubborn, but it's also very on brand for him.
What about his politics? Rock stars can be very divisive. Grohl seems to thread a needle pretty well, but he's definitely not neutral.
No, he's not. He's a classic liberal. He grew up with a public school teacher mom in the D.C. area. He supported John Kerry, Obama, Biden. He played at the 2012 Democratic National Convention. But he doesn't usually get on a soapbox and preach. He tends to use music and humor.
Like the Westboro Baptist Church incident.
This is a perfect example of how he operates. The Westboro Baptist Church, this infamous hate group that pickets soldiers' funerals, decided to picket a Foo Fighters concert in Kansas City.
Because rock and roll is the devil's music or something.
Something like that. Now, most bands would either ignore them or issue a stern press release condemning them. Grohl put the entire band on the back of a flatbed truck, drove it out into the parking lot right in front of the protesters, and played a disco song called Keep It Clean, Hot Buns.
He rickrolled them in person.
He drowned out their hate speech with high-volume, homoerotic disco dancing. It was weaponized joy. He made them look completely ridiculous without ever getting angry or engaging them on their level.
But the St. Dave armor, as we've called it, took a massive hit recently. We have to address the elephant in the room, the 2024 scandal.
We do. For 20 years, Dave Grohl was the ultimate family man, married to Jordan Blum since 2003, 3 daughters. He was the rock star dad who drove a minivan and coached his daughter's soccer team.
And then in September of 2024, an Instagram post.
A simple black screen with white text. He announced that he had fathered a daughter outside of his marriage.
It was a shock, a genuine shock to his fan base.
It broke the internet for 24 hours. People were genuinely devastated. And I think it's because we, the public, projected so much virtue onto him. We wanted him to be the one guy who was perfect.
And the reality is, he's a guy who spends 10 months a year on the road, who has a history of infidelity. He's admitted to cheating in his first marriage back in the 90s, and who made a massive, life-altering mistake.
He asked for his family's forgiveness publicly and said he would be a loving parent to the new child. But it definitely shattered the pedestal. It reminded all of us that nice guy is a brand, but Dave Grohl is a complex, flawed human being, just like everyone else.
And that brings us really to the current era of his life, because just like in 1994, he is currently navigating a world that has been completely redefined by a massive loss.
The death of his best friend, Taylor Hawkins, in March of 2022.
If losing Kurt Cobain was the defining trauma of his youth, losing Taylor Hawkins is the defining trauma of his middle age.
It might be even worse in some ways. He knew Kurt for about 3 years. He knew Taylor for 25 years. They were inseparable. He was the best man at his wedding. Taylor died in a hotel in Colombia while they were on tour.
I think everyone, myself included, thought that was the end of the Foo Fighters. How do you possibly replace your soulmate?
But Grohl did what Grohl always does. He processed the grief through work. He went into a studio and made a record. They released the album, but here we are in 2023.
It is a heavy, heavy record.
It's devastating. It's explicitly about the grief of losing Taylor and also about his mother, Virginia, who passed away in the same year. A 1-2 punch of unimaginable loss.
And musically, what did he do on that album?
He got back behind the drums. He played all the drum tracks on the album himself as a full circle moment, just like in 1994 when his world fell apart. His fourth instinct was to go into a studio by himself and start hitting things. It's his therapy.
So as we wrap this up, what is the ultimate takeaway? We've looked at the punk kid hitting pillows, the grunge engine, the ruthless CEO, the super collaborator, and the grieving friend.
The takeaway for me is momentum. Dave Grohl is a shark. If he stops swimming, he feels like he'll die. His entire life, his entire career is a reaction against stasis.
He keeps moving forward just to survive.
Exactly. When Scream died, he immediately joined Nirvana. When Nirvana died, he built the Foo Fighters from the ashes. When the Foo Fighters got stale in the early 2000s, he jumped ship to play with QKSA. When Taylor died, he made a FOC. But here we are. He fundamentally refuses to let tragedy be the end of the story.
And now they have a new drummer, the great Josh Freese. The machine is back on a road, playing stadiums again.
But the dynamic has changed, hasn't it? He's no longer the young guy in rock. He's the elder statesman. He's the ultimate survivor. And so the real question is, will he keep this massive stadium machine running forever? Or, given the immense personal turmoil and the loss of his best friend, will we see him eventually return to that 1994 mode? Just a guy alone in a room making music for himself, away from the spotlight.
Knowing Dave Grohl, he'll probably try to do both at the same time.
They'll probably pull it off somehow.
It's been a fascinating ride, from hitting pillows in a bedroom in Virginia to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice.
Not bad for a high school dropout.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the life and career of Dave Grohl. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you then.